The coolest part about being someone who plays more than one type of game is that every single year we'll deliver at least one title that I'll completely adore. But every now and then we get years so good, and I mean so good that every single person gets something incredible. No matter if you like RPGs, platformers, action games, fighting games, or shooters, these years were so good that nobody had a reason to complain, and if they did, they were only seeking attention because really, those years were just that incredible. So, wanna take a look at them?
The early 90s was a wonderful era, mainly because I wasn't born yet. For that same reason, it was hard to find a year that could make me say, wow. But in the end, I was able to narrow it down to 2 years, 1992 and 1993. Both had amazing releases all over them. It's honestly hard to choose one over the other, cause both of them had either amazing sequels or influential titles. 1992, for example, had the likes of The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and Kirby's Adventure, games that push their series forward with amazing gameplay mechanics that will become staples and are still regarded as some of the best games in their own franchises. But 1992 also saw the beginning of the Mario Kart franchise with, you guessed it, Super Mario Kart. Nowadays, this game might be very hard to go back to, but it was a necessary step for Nintendo to eventually make better and more fun Mario Karts. We also had Wolfenstein 3D, a game often regarded as the grandfather of 3D shooters, for helping first-person shooters gain more popularity by establishing fast-paced action and pushing forward the graphics. Alone in the Dark was also an important release due to being the first survival horror game to use 3D models on pre-rendered backgrounds, which will become a key inspiration for future survival horror games, most importantly, Resident Evil. But among all these games, there was one that left a huge impact among gamers and non-gamers alike, for better or worse. Mortal Kombat was the game to introduce a wide audience to a new level of video game violence. Blood, gore, decapitation, mutilation, anything that could make sensitive people's stomachs revolt was here, and no doubt many parents and US senators became aware of this. This caused Mortal Kombat to be the center of many controversies as the game became a key player that led to the creation of the ESRB system. But even then, to this day, Mortal Kombat's influence remains such that this franchise is still banned in multiple countries all over the globe. And take in mind, this is only 1992, cause 1993 did not fall behind at all. Once again, you had new great sequels or franchises reinventing themselves. There was Mortal Kombat 2 overshadowing the critical and commercial success of its predecessor. You had Zelda's Link's Awakening, which is still considered one of the most unique and weirdest games in the franchise. Kinda in a similar fashion to Sonic CD, which also released on the same year. There was also Super Mario All-Stars, remaking the first games to 16 bits and finally taking the lost levels outside of Japan. And of course, you also had the Mega Man franchise speeding up the action with Mega Man X. But there were also new franchises leaving a mark in their own way. Star Fox debuted on the Super Nintendo, featuring the new Super FX chip, which let developers deliver mind-blowing 2D and 3D graphics. And arcade games all over the world continue to deliver banger after banger after banger. There's the aforementioned Mortal Kombat 2, but SNK also had some fun with Samurai Showdown. NBA Jam hit the scene and it became one of the first licensed sports games, having real teams and players. And Namco, on the other hand, was swimming in a lot of money thanks to the success of
Ridge Racer! Ridge Racer!
Sega also took a big leap forward with Virtua Fighter, the first fully polygonal fighting game that will become a big influence for future 3D fighting games. But even when you take into consideration all these amazing titles, only one game in 1993 left a bigger mark. I really don't need to explain any of this, right? Every person who plays video games has heard about Doom and its importance for gaming as a whole, often referred to as the most important first-person shooter and the father of the genre. Even after 30 years of its release, Doom continues to be considered one of the greatest video games of all time. The game is a key player in bringing more attention to the gaming landscape by delivering a fast-paced single-player campaign with an amazing, blood-pumping soundtrack and graphics that, at the time, blew away anyone who played it. Its legacy was such that you can play this game on anything, on PC, consoles, mobile, a calculator, a microwave, or a pregnancy test. 1992 and 1993 were amazing years for gaming, not just for their incredible titles, but because of the amount of breakthrough games that push forward what gaming can do and expose more people to this amazing world. 1998 is a very special year for me, mostly because that's when I was born.
Oh, thank God.
Okay, jokes aside, this year was still amazing in every aspect. Despite being out in the market for a few years already, the PlayStation 1 was still enjoying a lot of success and great games, thanks to titles such as Tomb Raider 3, Parasite Eve, Spyro the Dragon, Crash Bandicoot 3, and Xenogears. But among all of these incredible titles, I have to highlight the success of Metal Gear Solid, a game that stood out for innovating in every single category, with fantastic graphics at the time, amazing voice acting, and an engrossing story full with a lot of lengthy cutscenes and a complicated narrative. It was stunning and brilliant at the same time, and it helped stealth games gain more popularity among players, and to this day remains as not just one of the best PlayStation titles, but one of the greatest games of all time. It is a masterpiece in every way. Even so, Nintendo didn't fall behind at all despite the N64 not doing as hot as they would have liked. They still made some great games, such as F-Zero X, putting players through tons of hills, loops, tunnels, corkscrews and pipes, all while delivering high-speed action as they try to survive and defeat the other 29 opponents. Banjo-Kazooie was another standout of the year, with its extremely polished controls, great humor, amazing level design, incredible graphics, lovable characters, an insane amount of content and a unique whimsical tone. This game captured the hearts of many, myself included. It is one of my favorite games of all time. I love it so much to the point that anything related to the bear and bird can make me lose my mind. It is an amazing game that has barely aged a bit in 25 years. And yet, despite how much I love Banjo-Kazooie, there was one game that will change many people forever. A lot of folks out there might tell you that Ocarina of Time wasn't really that good and doesn't deserve to be one of the highest ranking games of all time. But just remember, those people don't have a soul, and their feelings don't change how important this game is, and why it deserves the praise and love it got and continues to get. With its memorable story, impressive graphics for the time, fantastic music and creative level design, it captured the hearts of many people. Is this game really that perfect? No, not at all. In fact, I want to say it has aged worse than the likes of Metal Gear Solid or Banjo-Kazooie. But it still remains a magical experience to this day, and something that back then left a legacy that continues present to this day. It popularized features that future 3D adventure games will implement, and many directors in the gaming industry had cited Ocarina of Time as one of their main inspirations in their own games. And as crazy as it sounds, Nintendo had one more ace up their sleeve. Pokémon Red and Blue hit store shelves, and I don't think I need to go too in-depth about these games, but just as a summary, their success was such they started a craze all over the world aptly named Pokémania, where the franchise was everywhere, not just the games, you had toys, trading cards, food, an animated show, and so much more. Even after the craze ended, Pokémon continued to be the highest grossing media franchise in the world and segmented itself as an important part of popular culture. And yet, 1998 did not stop there. Resident Evil 2 released, and it left an amazing impression by improving on every single aspect of its predecessor. It was a game so good that to this day you can still see a lot of Resident Evil fans put it in their own top 5s. PC players had it really good with the release of Half-Life, StarCraft, Grim Fandango, and Fallout 2, and the arcades had Marvel vs. Capcom. And I just can't finish 1998 without mentioning Sega releasing the Dreamcast as well as one of its magnum opuses. Sonic Adventure! No matter what shitty video game critics may tell you, there's no such thing as a rough transition to 3D here. This game had everything that makes Sonic so cool. It was fast-paced, the controls were so smooth, and the level design was so clever and open, which added a ton of replayability. It threw curveballs in the form of different playable characters. It had one of gaming's greatest soundtracks ever made, and a great story jam-packed with action and emotion. This game was oozing with so much style and confidence. One of Sega's greatest, one of Sonic's best. And I think you can apply that to 1998 as a whole. 2001 saw the release of 3 special consoles. Japan and North America saw the release of the GameCube, a console that was criticized for its lack of multimedia features, but is now remembered fondly thanks to its gallery of fantastic titles. While the launch window wasn't exactly the best the console had to offer, there were a number of standout titles: Super Monkey Ball, Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2, Crazy Taxi, and of course, Luigi's Mansion, giving Luigi his first ever adventure that was actually good if you catch my drift. And not too long after that, North America got 2 incredible titles on the same day: Super Smash Bros. Melee and Pikmin, the former which acquired such a popularity that is still being played in fighting game tournaments to this day, and the latter which ended up showing what the GameCube was truly capable of while segmenting itself as one of Nintendo's most unique and original franchises. But Nintendo didn't stop there, as 2001 also saw the release of the Game Boy Advance, and with it came a plethora of fantastic titles: F-Zero Maximum Velocity, Golden Sun, Mario Kart Super Circuit, Advance Wars, Mega Man Battle Network.
Mega Man Battle Network, Mega Horror Boobs Network.
There was also Wario Land 4, a platformer so good, but so good that it will end up inspiring the creation of one of the greatest video games ever made. And if you're a fan of this channel, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. And meanwhile, outside of America, Japan ended up getting Gyakuten Saiban, a franchise we know here as Ace Attorney. But just because the GBA was out, it didn't mean the Game Boy Color didn't get any love at all. Mario Tennis, The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, the American release of Pokémon Crystal, and Kirby's Tilt and Tumble. And yet, after all of this, the Nintendo 64 still managed to get some love at the end of the day, receiving many fantastic titles that released in Japan the previous year, such as Mario Party 3, which is my personal favorite in the series, Pokémon Stadium 2, which to this day, it makes me wonder why they didn't just do a Pokémon party game, just imitate what is there, those minigames are so good! And there was also Paper Mario, an adorable RPG adventure filled with charm. And even though I think these games are superior, the one that truly made an impact that year was Conker's Bad Fur Day, a game created as an answer against the criticism that Nintendo only made games for kids by featuring a lot of graphic violence, profanity, and the use of alcohol and tobacco, filled with a lot of fourth wall breaks and pop culture references. On the other hand, the Sega Dreamcast was on its last legs, but at the very least, it went out with a bang as it delivered one more game that to this day is still beloved by millions of fans. Sonic Adventure 2, keeping everything that made its prequel so special by putting its own unique twist on things. The level design, the story, the pacing, the music, everything about this game is fantastic! A testament of Sonic's golden era. 2001 also marked the arrival of the Xbox, a console that became a strong competitor thanks to its online service, the Xbox Live, which allowed the console to gain an early foothold in online gaming. The console also released with some notable games. Dead or Alive 3, which... honestly, outside of Coomers, I don't know a single person who genuinely cares about Dead or Alive. Unlike the other Xbox game that released on the same day, which is... Halo Combat Evolved. As the name implies, this game is credited for modernizing the first-person shooter genre, and it is considered one of the most important launch titles of all time, as it single-handedly helped Microsoft to gather an ever-growing community of fans. This was achieved thanks to its unique setting, great story, and for taking everything that made previous first-person shooters so good and improving on everything. This game represents an achievement in gaming. The coolest part about 2001 is that, even though these other consoles were delivering their own masterpieces, the PlayStation 2 did not fall behind at all. In fact, you can say it was only getting better. Jak and Daxter, Grand Theft Auto 3, Devil May Cry, Final Fantasy X, Silent Hill 2, Onimusha, and goddamn Metal Gear Solid 2! All of these games either did something revolutionary or became the basis for future games to improve on, but all of them were fantastic in their own way. No matter if you wanted to stick with Nintendo or the PlayStation or wanted to try the new Xbox console everyone was talking about, there was no lose situation with any of them, which is why 2001 remains one of the greatest years in gaming. And funny enough, I think the next year might have been even better. 2004 is weird because this year didn't exactly have revolutionary titles that changed the landscape of gaming forever. We got the release of the Nintendo DS, and while that console got incredible titles down the line, its release was nothing to write home about, as its only notable games ended up being Super Mario 64 DS and that Metroid Prime Hunters demo. But everyone else had it so damn good, like every single console got 10 out of 10s after 10 out of 10s after 10 out of 10s. The PlayStation 2 proved once again why it had no difficulty dominating this era. Resident Evil Outbreak, Shin Megami Tensei Digital Devil Saga, as well as
Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne,
Sly 2, Band of Thieves, Katamari Damacy, Drakengard, Ace Combat 5, Jak 3...
If we put this game against the other two in the trilogy, then who do you think is winning the Jak-off?
You also had another masterpiece with Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, innovating in gameplay and graphics while still delivering a brilliant story filled with action, drama, and insane plot twists. But of course, the crowning jewel of this year was GTA San Andreas, a game that left a mark in the best and worst possible ways. In gamers due to how it improved upon its predecessors in every aspect, in parents and politicians due to its controversies, and in many Latino kids all over the world as they will eventually associate this game with Loquendo.
Si le sabes, le sabes.
No matter what you looked at, the PlayStation 2 had something incredible for everyone. Nobody with a PS2 lost here. But again, 2004 wouldn't have been that good of a year if other consoles hadn't delivered something incredible. The Xbox also had a solid lineup with titles such as Ninja Gaiden, Fable, Sudeki, and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. And while these are all great games, maybe except for Sudeki, but that's because I've never heard people talk about it. All of them pale in comparison to the quality and success of Halo 2, by building up on the hype and popularity of its predecessor, ironing out all its shortcomings and expanding upon that foundation, Halo 2 managed to secure 1.5 million of pre-orders! This game was already a success even before it released. These numbers increased even more on November 9, reaching to a stunning 2.4 million copies sold in just 24 hours! At the time, this was considered one of the most successful video game launches ever, an achievement well deserved because Halo 2 is just that good. Really, really good. While Nintendo wasn't doing as hot as its competitors, the games it pulled out, however, were nothing to scoff at. The GameCube saw the release of Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, a remake of Metal Gear Solid that some people might prefer or not to the original. The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Adventures, which is arguably the most underrated game in the whole franchise, and just like Crystal Chronicles, required the use of the Game Boy Link cable to play with other friends. You also got Tales of Symphonia, Sonic Heroes, Jimmy Neutron Attack of the Twonkies, and the only reason I'm mentioning this game is because this was the very first GameCube game I ever got alongside Smash Bros. Melee, so I have a soft spot for it. And speaking of licensed games, there was the SpongeBob SquarePants The Movie Game, I'm actually not crazy on this one. This is a surprisingly solid 3D platformer that any fan of the show should play. Metroid Prime and Paper Mario also got incredible sequels in Prime 2 Echoes and The Thousand Year Door respectively. And if you wanted more multiplayer mayhem on the GameCube, you also had Mario Party 6. Even with all these amazing titles, for me, the absolute best GameCube game this year was Pikmin 2, improving tremendously upon the flaws of its predecessor and making it bigger and better. It's still one of my favorite games of all time, and I can't put into words what it means to me. Which is why I suggest you watch my previous Pikmin videos to understand what I mean. Oh, but even with the Nintendo DS on the horizon, the Game Boy Advance still had a lot to offer. Sonic Advance 3 and Sonic Battle, Mega Man Zero 3, Mario vs Donkey Kong, the fantastic remake that is Metroid Zero Mission. God, this game is so good! The also great remakes of Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green, F-Zero GP Legend, Kirby and the Missing Mirror, The Legend of Zelda The Minish Cap! Being a Nintendo fan around this time was nothing short of amazing, because it seemed like every single franchise was being given love in some way, shape or form. Except Star Tropics. And yet, even after how good console owners were having it, PC players were still having a great time. Far Cry, Doom 3, Warhammer 40,000, Roller Coaster Tycoon 3... God, remember when EA used to make good games? Yeah, I really liked it when they released The Sims 2 in 2004. And same with Blizzard, that was the year when World of Warcraft came out. Valve was also having it so good with the commercial and critical successes of Half-Life 2 and Garry's Mod. The latter which will go to define my sense of humor during my early teenage years.
Bumper cars!
But the most impressive thing about the PC releases is that 2004 also became the year where the very first version of Cave Story came to be. An indie game well known for its Metroidvania inspiration and for being made by one single guy. It's crazy to think Cave Story is almost 20 years old, honestly. But it's admirable to see how far the game has come since then. 2007 was the year that didn't just deliver amazing sequels, but also saw the birth of many new intellectual properties that succeeded in different ways. From the critically acclaimed BioShock, to Crysis, which was praised for its gameplay and fantastic graphics, Mass Effect with its narrative, characters, voice acting and world building, Portal for putting a unique twist to the first-person formula by having clever puzzles and level design, as well as introducing GLaDOS, who will go on to become one of gaming's most iconic antagonists. Rock Band also made its debut in 2007, and unlike Guitar Hero, it featured more instruments which allow you to play with up to 4 friends. And even then, Guitar Hero didn't stick with its arm cross, as it released what still remains its best entry in the franchise, Guitar Hero 3, which, I mean, come on, the music selection in this game was beyond immaculate. There's a reason why this was the one to make it to the arcades. By this year, the PlayStation 3 was still fresh in the market, and in order to make a good impression, it delivered Uncharted, one of Sony's best. It pushed forward what the graphics could do by showcasing beautiful environments and non-stop Hollywood action. By combining third-person shooter elements as well as platforming, it made for an amazing experience that felt like a movie, but was still a full video game at the end of the day. You also had the debut of other franchises such as Skate, The Witcher, Crackdown, and of course, who can forget, Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed. Alongside these new fantastic IPs, other franchises got amazing sequels. There's the aforementioned Guitar Hero 3, sure. But there was also God of War 2 on the PS2, Persona 3 released in North America around August, Call of Duty reinvented itself and acquired a higher level of popularity with Modern Warfare, a success so big that its competitors tried to imitate it. Halo 3 broke the record set by its predecessors as it managed to sell 5 million copies in just 2 months. Valve also released its own first-person shooters in Half-Life 2 Episode 2 and Team Fortress 2, which, as I've said before, it's my favorite game of all time that I've never played, cause just like Garry's Mod, it shaped my sense of humor at a young age.
I think Henny is dead.
Henny is dead?
While the Nintendo DS didn't get a lot of standouts this year, said standouts were honestly very solid. Sonic Rush Adventure, which is actually the first DS game I ever owned, The Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass, which delivered a ton of creative puzzles and gameplay mechanics with the dual screens, Mario Party DS, which has one of the most unique settings in the series, and the cult classic The World Ends With You, which I used to own at some point but sold for $25 before I even played it.
I guess I deserve that.
Meanwhile, the Wii was getting a lot of stellar titles: Super Paper Mario, Mario Strikers Charge, WarioWare Smooth Moves, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, the Wii version of Resident Evil 4, which is debatably one of the best ways to play that game, and my personal favorite, Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. With its amazing gameplay, difficulty curve, lovable cast of characters, and excellent story made this game for me the pinnacle of this franchise. It is an easy top 3 for me. And yet, even after all of that, there was one Nintendo game that shined more than the rest. What can I say about Super Mario Galaxy that hasn't been said already? Is it the creative level design? How it uses the space setting to its full potential? How it delivered beautiful graphics despite the Wii's limitations? Is it the masterful soundtrack? Or maybe, just maybe, how it uses the Wii's unique gimmicks to make interesting challenges? It's everything. Everything about Mario Galaxy goes above and beyond to deliver one of Mario's greatest adventures yet. This is the game you had to own if you had a Wii. It's insane how magical it is. And that just goes for all of 2007 as a whole. It was a magical era. So after 2007, it took literally 10 years until we could get another year that most people agreed was excellent. And that is not to say there weren't good years during this time period. Again, every year is good if you play more than 2 genres. 2010, 2011, and 2013 all deliver high-quality titles in their own right, but I don't think they compare to the previous years I already talked about, or in this case, 2017. This year was insane! So much anticipation for Nintendo's newest console, the Nintendo Switch. There were a lot of amazing sequels and prequels, as well as revivals and new indie games. This is back when being a PlayStation owner was still worth it, as we got Nioh, the amazing Nier Automata by Yoko Taro. Persona 5 took people by storm by finally releasing after winter 2014. And hey, even though I don't like this game anymore, I can't deny how popular it was and how many people loved it. There was also Dragon Quest XI, which is the best one in the entire series. And by that I mean it is the only Dragon Quest I've ever played. One of the hypest moments for the console this year was when Crash Bandicoot made a return after being dormant for so many years with the N. Sane Trilogy. Full remakes of the original trilogy everyone is so fond of. Sony also released a new IP this year that they were treating as the next hot thing that will make a cultural impact: Horizon Zero Dawn.
More like Horizon Zero fans!
And after 2 years of being a Japan exclusive game, Yakuza 0 finally made it to the West, which is inarguably one of the best in the series, but was also popular enough to give the franchise a much needed boost in the West, which only became even better when a few months later we also got Yakuza Kiwami, an excellent remake of the first Yakuza game. But if you ask me, the best thing Sony did this year was Gravity Rush 2, which is still for me one of the most underrated and underappreciated masterpieces ever made. Like, damn, it's so good! These franchises are better from Sony and gamers alike. It makes me so sad. Fuck! These were some games that only PlayStation users had at the time, but if you also own an Xbox or a PC, there were still a lot of incredible things to try out. Resident Evil 7, going back to the series' roots by making you feel more vulnerable than ever. Limited resources, avoiding combat, and a stronger emphasis on puzzle solving and survival. It made for one hell of a game and one of the scariest experiences you could try that year. And maybe you can say the same about The Evil Within too, but I don't know, I haven't played this game, but I hear good things about it.
That may be, but there's evil within too.
Sonic Mania felt like a proper celebration of the classic titles, having everything that made them so special while also adding some new levels and ideas, all while using your knowledge of the classics to surprise you at every chance it could. Too bad they kinda fucked that up a few months later with how terrible Sonic Forces was, but hey, let's not sour the good stuff. Cuphead was also one of the most important games to come out in 2017. After 4 years since its announcement, the game released with much deserved commercial success and critical acclaim. With a visual style inspired by the rubber hose era of animation and an extremely tough challenge, Cuphead made an excellent impression on anyone who played it. Oh, but that wasn't all. Indie games were also having a blast. Doki Doki Literature Club, A Hat in Time, Night in the Woods, What Remains of Edith Finch. Actually, I don't know a single thing about this game, but one of my best friends always talks about it, so I'm mentioning it just because of that. But at the top of them all was Hollow Knight, one of the greatest Metroidvanias ever conceived, with excellent controls, a simple yet difficult to master challenge that rewards patience and skill, with amazing visuals, an engrossing musical score, fantastic atmosphere, and a great story and world building, makes Hollow Knight one of the best Metroidvanias, one of the greatest 2017 games, and one of the greatest indie games of all time! Around this time, Nintendo was also testing the waters on new ideas, namely mobile gaming. They had already tried something with Miitomo the previous year, but in this one, they expanded even further with Pokémon Duel, Super Mario Run, Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, and their biggest success on phone so far, Fire Emblem Heroes. Also known as that one mobile game I keep making videos about because people really like them, which is still going on even today after 6 years. That's crazy to think about. One of the most unexpected things that happened this year was Nintendo releasing the Super NES Mini. The console itself wasn't that surprising since they had already done something similar with the NES. But what nobody expected is that the SNES Mini included Star Fox 2, a game well known for being cancelled just as it was about to be completed. And now, after more than 20 years since its cancellation, people were finally able to experience it, and I mean, what can I say? It was definitely better than Star Fox Zero, that's for sure. But of course, when it came to Nintendo, everyone had their eyes on the new console, the Nintendo Switch, which throughout the year delivered titles such as 1-2 Switch, ARMS, Fire Emblem Warriors, and of course, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Holy shit!
This game, alongside Super Mario Odyssey, were among the best of the best, with how open they were, how they both had their own unique challenges and ideas, how they proved what the Switch was capable of, and how they pushed their respective series forward. They became instant classics because of how good they were. But even after that, you could still look forward to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Splatoon 2, Mario + Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and what was perhaps the most controversial title of the year, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. This is one of those games that you either adore or you will dedicate your entire life to hate it.
Can you imagine being so petty for one game?
And honestly, I can't blame people at all. Xenoblade 2 is one of those games riddled with a lot, and I mean a lot of flaws and a ton of weeboo pandering. But if you miraculously manage to see past all of that, you'll find a fantastic game, with an extremely deep yet rewarding combat system, alongside a great coming-to-age story and some of the best looking environments on the Switch even to this day. Oh, but for me, it was also special to still own a 3DS, as there were still some great games coming out. Ever Oasis, Dragon Quest VIII, Monster Hunter Stories, and the Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga remake. But two games in particular stood out to me. Fire Emblem Shadows of Valentia, an amazing remake of the Famicom exclusive Gaiden that was very challenging, very different from other Fire Emblems, and had great visuals for 3DS standards as well as full voice acting. But the one game that meant everything for me that year was Metroid Samus Returns. Huh, funny, these two games were 3DS remakes of the second game of their own franchises. That's interesting. Samus Returns may be a divisive game, its flaws are very apparent and its high challenge may have pushed some newcomers away. But for me, this game meant so much. Not just because I really enjoyed it, but its mere existence, as well as Ridley being announced in Smash Bros. Basically told me, hey! Metroid is coming back, and it's only gonna get better from here. And it was all worth it. Cause a few years later, Metroid Dread released and this game was so good. And I mean, so perfect, so flawless, so immaculate, that I think you know the rest of the story.
Remember, these years I just talked about are what most of the gaming community consider the best of the best. But I would still like to know, which years in gaming were your absolute favorites? I would really love to see what you guys have to say. There are no wrong answers here. Remember, I'll say it again, and I'll say it as many times as I need to. Every year in gaming is a great year, as long as you play more than 2 types of games. But anyway, thank you so much for your time, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video, and you know the drill. If you could support the channel, you know, by liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, or Patreon, that will mean so much to me, because I'm kinda struggling right now, not gonna lie, but hey, the show must go on, right? Anyway, have a wonderful day, and take care! I'll see you next time!